Canada's largest sports-specific museums, the largest in BC, British Columbia here. We've been in existence since 1966, and we've been in this location in BC Place since 1992. We're about a 15,000 square foot facility, and we've got over 27,000 artifacts in our collection, all related to sport in British Columbia, whether it's an athlete, an event that took place here. If it's related to sport in BC, we probably have it. So I'll take you on a little bit of a tour. Right now we're in our front entrance area, which is our Defining Moments Gallery, and we've got it themed for the Summer Olympics, which were held last summer. We'll probably retheme it in the next 6 to 12 months. So there's some of the biggest moments in BC sport have been identified on some of the banners and the mural on the back wall over there. Terry Fox's Marathon of Hope. I'll show you his gallery in a little bit. Some of the other major amateur sport moments, professional moments, you name it. It's kind of represented here.
You call these artifacts?
Yeah.
27,000.
27,000 of them.
Are they all on display?
They're not all on display at any given time. It varies, but usually about 5,000 artifacts on display at any given time. And then we have a storage area on the other side of the stadium where we rotate artifacts. So we have everything cataloged on a searchable database. Every artifact is tagged with what's called an accession number, and that way if we want to look up, say, one of these jackets, for instance, we'll punch that number into our database, and it'll bring up all the information we need and where it's located. And we've just spent a year, mostly because of COVID, working in the back, upgrading our content management system and upgrading the information we have on our artifacts.
So as the curator, that's one of your jobs, is to determine what's rotated and when, and where to place the objects, and how to group them, and
yep, that's all of that. So it's fun. There is a lot of work and there is some pressure, but it's you kind of get to choose different themes and topics, and we're always trying to time it with current events. So like the Summer Olympics last summer, for instance, if there's a big event happening in the city. We just got a small Vancouver Marathon display here because the 50th anniversary of the Vancouver Marathon was last weekend, so and that was held. So we got some of the marathon trophies out. So things like that. So
did you go out and find these artifacts, or do they find you?
Great question. Both. So there are, if there's an event happening in the city, or if there's an athlete that we come into contact with, we'll seek them out and we'll try to get items from that event, or see if an athlete will give us items. Say there's a great BC athlete competing at the Olympics, or maybe there's a big event involving one of our professional sports teams, like the Vancouver Canucks, the BC Lions, the Vancouver Whitecaps. Maybe we'll approach them and see if they might donate an item. And items do find us as well. We get people that often come in just unannounced, sometimes visitors, that'll offer us items. Sometimes people are cleaning out their house or their attic, or discover something in a family member's collection and don't know what to do with it, and they don't want to throw it out, so they'll approach us, and we're often given items that way. Sometimes I go out to antique shows, memorabilia shows, and I look for items. If we're putting together an exhibit, so if there's something specific we're looking for, then I might target a collector that I know might have something, or I'll find somebody that has an item. I'll find say we're doing an exhibit or a display on a specific athlete. I'll try to find that athlete and see if they he or she might donate or loan an item to us. So.
That's interesting that athletes would be willing to give up some of their precious
some want to
medals and their little memorabilia.
Some have. It's funny. Some it's the most precious artifact or item that they have, and they want to maintain ownership of it, so they might loan it to us. Others couldn't care less. I've had Olympic gold medalists walk in with their Olympic medal in a paper bag and just said, "Here you go, take it." And I've had others that had it, in a lockbox, and we've had to go through pretty detailed insurance applications and documentation, and it's it can be both extremes.
And but it's funny, the same medal It's
Yeah.
just the emotional attachment.
Oh, yeah.
There, depending on the athlete.
I find most Olympic medalists aren't that attached to their medals. There's a few that are, but most, I guess it's the journey rather than the object, the item. So it's interesting because I think for the average person, like you and I, if we had an Olympic medal, I mean, we'd be
Wearing it every day.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, we're here in the Vancouver 2010 gallery. So this gallery was built just after the Olympics in 2010 when Vancouver hosted. And we built this without knowing what was going to be on display. We had a design plan, but we didn't know what artifacts were going to be part of the gallery. We were still approaching athletes from all over the world. A lot of the Canadian athletes were pretty easy because we have contacts with the Canadian Olympic Committee and some of the provincial sport organizations. But the international athletes was really tough. But we would reach out to them if they had a website. We found some on Twitter, on Facebook, and we would send them messages and just show them the project and see if they wanted to be part of it. And a lot did. So there's items here from all 82 nations that competed in Vancouver, and we believe this might be the largest collection of Vancouver 2010 memorabilia in the world.
And that was because of all the research that you did.
Oh, not just me, but our team.
The whole team.
Yeah.
But you don't have a very big team here.
We don't.
You have like 6 members?
About 6 staff. It fluctuates a little bit. In the summer, we usually get a little bit bigger, and at that time when we were putting this together, we had a little bit of a bigger team, maybe like 8 or 9 people, but it was a small team, yeah.
But research can really take a lot of time, so that's pretty incredible.
Tell me about it, yeah.
That would have been years of research.
It was certainly about a year, yeah, all told for this gallery. So we're really proud of it. We every year when an Olympic, especially in a Winter Olympics, we always get schools and classes that come in to see the gallery. So this is where we honor all of our individual athletes, coaches, builders, honored teams, pioneers, media members. There's over 400 individuals that have been inducted and over 60 teams. And we're inducting a new class, our 2021 class of inductees, in about a month, in June. So that'll be exciting. We have our 2020 class of inductees featured in these 4 display cases here. Everyone from Kirk McLean, who was very well known in BC, who was one of the best goaltenders ever to play for the Canucks. Kathy Newman, who's a world-renowned figure in wheelchair sport. Jeff Francis, who was a major league pitcher, best known pitching with the Colorado Rockies. Valerie Johnson, who's well known in trampoline, gymnastics. Brent Johnson, who's fairly well known, at least in BC. He's a great player for the BC Lions, our Canadian Football League team. You mentioned when we were walking up Sonda Gadet, who's likely the world's most decorated wheelchair curler. 3 Paralympic gold medals in wheelchair curling, 3 world championships, and just incredible. She's a member of our board now as well, so she's really invested in the hall. Alex Steeda was the first Canadian to wear the yellow jersey at the Tour de France. Robin Bawa was the first South Asian to play in the NHL. Played with the Washington Capitals and the Canucks, Anaheim Mighty Ducks. So it runs the gamut. Every class is a varied group, and we've also featured some of the artifacts from some of our honored members in this gallery. The one I always point out, which is incredible, is this 40-foot rowing show. It was actually made by a boat builder from Seattle, named George Pocock. And there were 4 University of British Columbia students that rowed this to Canada's first ever Olympic gold medal in rowing at the 1956 Olympics. And they're known as the Cinderella 4 because they actually weren't good enough. They were the spares for the 8 crew, and they put them in the 4, and they went out and they won the gold medal anyhow. We've got other items from more recent Olympics, but I'll show you a couple over here that are pretty significant. And there's a couple items that are from American athletes as well, which you might get a kick out of. One of them is this garden trowel that was used by Jesse Owens to dig his starting holes at the 1936 Olympics.
How did you get that?
Well, in the 1970s, we were often bringing up speakers at our induction dinner, the Banquet of Champions. And Jesse came up as a guest speaker, and he presented this as a gift to our Hall of Fame. So we've kept it ever since. So
that was a great moment.
yeah, yeah. Other items, we're on the topic of garden trowels. Well, here's another garden trowel that was used by Percy Williams, who, when you're walking in, you probably saw the statue of the crouch sprinter.
Yeah.
Percy was the Olympic gold medalist in the 100 meters and the 200 meters at the 1928 Olympics. And that's the trowel he used to dig his starting holes in the cinder track. There were no starting blocks at that time, and those are the spikes that he wore. We have a lot of statues of athletes in Vancouver. You saw the statue of Percy Williams out front. There's statues of Terry Fox, who's probably our best known athlete in Canadian history. He attempted to run across Canada, and he had a prosthetic leg, and he did that to raise money for cancer. Didn't make it. Unfortunately, the cancer came back and claimed his life. But by that point, he'd already raised over $20 million. And the Terry Fox run still takes place today, and it's raised almost $1 billion now for Canada.
I mean, he just started a whole movement.
Yeah.
It's still a big part of Canada. 20
years old. Can you imagine you're 20 years old and thinking, I'm going to run across the country and raise money for cancer research. So he's kind of revered here in Canada. So there's statues of Terry. There's statues of the Miracle Mile, which is a great moment that took place in Vancouver here over at the P&E. In Stanley Park, there's a statue of a sprinter that's going through the finish line tape of Harry Jerome, and that's Harry Jerome's singlet that he was wearing at the 1964 Olympics, when that which is encapsulated that moment in that statue. He was a bronze medalist in the 100 meters, and just an amazing athlete. One thing I didn't point out in the Vancouver 2010 Gala, that's one of the 23 podiums that was used at the games.
There were 23 podiums at the games. I didn't realize that.
Different sizes and different venues, and we were given one of the team podiums that was used for medal ceremonies here at BC Place, because this was one of the venues for the 2010 Olympics. The opening and closing ceremonies were held here, and then nightly medal ceremonies. So later on, we learned that this podium was the one that some of the Canadian speed skaters were awarded their gold medal in the relay. And one of them, Denny Morrison, is pictured down here. Denny was inducted into our Hall of Fame in 2015, and he was recovering from an injury, and he was here for the announcement. And I was walking him over to a reporter, and he was really struggling with his leg at that time, and he actually stopped to sit down here and actually said, "Can I sit on this?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And we just took a break, and then it hit me, and I said, "Denny, do you realize you're sitting on your podium? You'd won your Olympic gold medal on this podium." And then he realized, it kind of clicked in for him, and he said, "Wow, can I do the interview right here?" And so he sat on the podium and was interviewed on his podium. There's only 3 that I know of that are still in complete form. One here, one at the Olympic Museum in Lausanne, Switzerland, and one at the Vancouver Convention Center across town. The other 20 apparently were chopped up into small little chunks and sold as souvenirs. This rowing shell has a nice connection with American rowing as well. So George Hungerford and Roger Jackson were another 2 UBC rowing students that competed at the 1964 Olympics in the pair, and they won gold in the pair at Tokyo. And they borrowed this shell from the University of Washington, and when they were returning the shell to the University of Washington, they were told that not only they weren't the first Olympic gold medalists to win in that shell. And they thought, how is that possible? And I guess at the 1956 Olympics, a University of Washington pair who was rowing for the United States won gold in Melbourne. And then the shell went back to the university. So this shell was used at 2 different Olympics by 2 different crews from 2 different countries, and they both won Olympic gold medals. Canadians love sport. They love their hockey. Hockey is definitely the most popular sport here, but other sports have become really, really popular. Soccer is huge in Canada. I mean, our women have been doing so well for years, and now the men's team is qualified for the World Cup this year. So there's a lot of interest in soccer. It's probably the highest participation sport in Canada. Football's popular, baseball, basketball, running is very popular. As long as I can remember, I've just loved sport and been interested in it. My family, we were a soccer family. So myself and my brother and my sister, we all played soccer, and I still play. But I played football, rugby, ran track. I have to stop here because Terry Fox is one of the most revered Canadians. Not just athletes, not just in any field, any walk of life. He's probably the most widely known and the most respected and honored Canadian. Just a truly selfless athlete who was trying to accomplish a great thing for others, and so we kind of honor him every year with the Terry Fox Run. And this gallery is a story of his amazing Marathon of Hope. His goal was to run across Canada from St. John's to Victoria, and he didn't make it. But even though he was running with a prosthetic leg, he ran 143 days straight, a marathon a day. Which is just on an athletic basis, it kind of boggles your mind. Over 40 kilometers a day, and yet he was doing it with a prosthetic leg and facing all sorts of crazy weather and hills and it's just unbelievable. And he was doing it for a cause. There's a guy named Rick Hansen, and Rick was inspired by Terry's Marathon of Hope, and he went on his own. What he called the Man in Motion World Tour in 1985 to 87. He was a wheelchair athlete, and he wheeled over 40,000 kilometers around the world, all through Canada, through the United States, basically every continent. 40,000 kilometers. Took him 2 years, 2 months, 2 days. Rick is still active, and actually there will be an event involving Rick and his foundation here at the Hall later this month. We often host special exhibitions, and the special exhibition that we have right now is really unique. It's on the Challenger map. We've got a portion of the largest topographical relief map in the world here. This is just 4% of the map. The full map was basically the size of I think 2 to 3 tennis courts. So it's massive. This was built by a guy named George Challenger in his basement, and it was meant to show the geography of British Columbia. So this portion is just southwestern BC. So the lower mainland is in this area here. Vancouver is right there, and you can see some of the larger mountain ranges nearby. This is Washington State right here with Mount Baker. Seattle will be to the south. Vancouver Island is over here. And then it kind of goes a little bit to the north. Whistler and Blackcomb is that cluster of mountains right in the center there, which is one of the world's better known ski resorts.
He did this in his house.
In his basement.
And he would have had to figure out the height of these different mountains in relation to each other.
Yep. He was a bit of a genius and an odd guy. It took him 7 years to build. He built it in sections. So there's actually 8 sections right here that are put together. There were almost 200 in the full map. He had apparently one little jigsaw that he would cut every piece. But he knew a lot about geography and building maps from the mining industry and the forestry industry, which he'd worked in. And this was kind of a hobby. But we're hoping that we can help the Challenger Foundation find a home for the full map, because the rest of the map is in storage right now. but at one time this was out in display in the original Hall of Fame building. This was in the middle of the building, and the Hall of Fame was on the perimeter. And so a lot of people still associate the Challenger map with BC Sports Hall of Fame.
So how much room would you need to display the whole map?
Another 190 panels.
Just like this?
Just like this. Yeah, it was photos, and you can see just half the size of it. I have one memory as a young kid where there was this moving bridge. You can kind of see a photo of it there. The bridge would move over the entire map, and I was a little kid and we were peering over the edge and kind of looking down, not really understanding what I was looking at. We partner with a provincial organization called Promotion Plus, which promotes women and girls in sport. And so every year they choose honorees, kind of highlighting athletes, coaches, builders, women that maybe haven't been recognized in sport but deserve some recognition. And so we partner with them to honor those individuals, and then we do a feature on anything related to women's sport in this space here, and it's something that's grown over time. This gallery's been here for about 15 years now. To give you a sense of the size and the breadth of our artifact collection, we picked 16 sports and picked one piece of equipment from each of those sports, and then tried to show an evolution of how that piece of equipment evolved. So you've got everything from football helmets behind you here, you can see how they evolved, to curling brooms, golf clubs, figure skates, hockey sticks. And this is our Indigenous sport galleries. This is one of our proudest new additions to the hall. We opened this gallery in 2018. It was a 2-year process to build this space, and we've won a number of national and international awards now. As far as we know, as of 2018, this was the largest permanent gallery or museum exhibition devoted to Indigenous sport in the world. And it features over 40 Indigenous athletes, sports, events, that are popular here in BC, and a lot of these stories had never been told before. Some are current athletes. Lacrosse is huge in Indigenous communities in BC, and it's Canada's national summer sport. And of course, hockey is also very popular in Indigenous communities in BC. Gino Ochik is one of our new inductees. Who'll be inducted into our hall next month. He was a legendary Canucks player in the 1990s. And Carey Price, still one of the top goaltenders in the NHL with the Montreal Canadiens, and an Olympic gold medalist with Canada, has Indigenous heritage. Other sports, boxing and Taekwondo featured, snowboarding. There's a team in BC called the First Nations snowboarding team that's devoted to helping young Indigenous athletes get involved in snowboarding events. Spencer O'Brien competed for Canada at the 2018 Winter Olympics. She's an Indigenous athlete.
Does the Indigenous community get involved with you, or I mean, do they discuss with you the artifacts that they give you, and
Definitely.
how they want to present it, and anything like that?
This was the most collaborative gallery we've ever done. We actually had a working committee of Indigenous sport leaders and athletes, and every piece of text in here was reviewed and polished and refined, and we worked with I can't even remember how many different peoples and communities, but it covered most of the province. What was difficult was that even though it was a big space, we had so much information and so much material that it was hard to fit it all in. So we've actually had to kind of rotate items. A lot of these stories are, stories that belong to peoples and athletes, and we're honored to share them, but they're not our stories. So we want to make sure that we're not using our voices, we're allowing their voices to be heard. Our Circle of Champions, which honors Indigenous athletes that have been inducted into the BC Sports Hall of Fame. I mentioned Terry Fox. Terry's Métis, but there's others. Kenny McLean is one of the Canada's best rodeo cowboys. Alec Nelson is revered in BC. We kind of consider him the elder of Indigenous sport. I was just talking with Alex. He's out coaching soccer at a tournament in North Vancouver today.
And what was his sport?
He was involved in soccer himself as an athlete, but he was more as a leader in Indigenous sport. He led a bunch of several different Indigenous sport organizations, but the one that he's best known for is leading the North American Indigenous Games, which is still held. It's one of the largest multi-sport event games in the world, and it's held all over North America. And he led the games that were here in Victoria, and prior to that, he was one of the founders of the games himself. Who was one of the earliest Indigenous athletes to play on the men's national soccer team, and as far as we know, is the first Indigenous soccer player to play professionally. He played with the Whitecaps in the early 1980s. Rodeo and other horse riding events are huge in Indigenous communities, especially in the interior of BC. Great story about Kayla Mussel, who's one of the best known rodeo cowboys in the world. In the rodeo community, if you just say the name Kayla, they often know who you're talking about. She's a professional saddle bronc rider, competes against the guys, often beats the guys. She's been featured in a Reba McEntire music video. She's been featured on Heartland, which is a well-known show up here in Canada on the CBC. She actually broke her neck in competition, but recovered and is back competing again. So she's quite tough. Also featured in a painting by Roy Henry Vickers, who's a very, very well-known Indigenous artist here in Canada. And what was funny is when we opened the gallery, Kayla was here, and she asked us if we could use that photo. So that was easy, and I thought I'd position it with the Roy Henry Vickers print. She came and found me and said, "I can't believe you did such a great job with everything." And I said, "Well, it was just material you gave us." And she said, "No, you don't understand." She said, "In that photo there, that's the saddle I'm using in that photo. She's wearing that hat. Those are her boots that she's wearing there. That rope is in the photo." And she didn't realize we were going to have that print, but it was all kind of...
It just came together.
Exactly like we drew it up. Canoeing is also huge, especially on the coast here in Indigenous communities. There's still all sorts of races that take place in war canoes. Cultus Lake, up at Seabird Island in Victoria. They're held throughout the spring and summer. This is actually it's a scale replica that was made specifically for this display case by a canoe builder, a traditional canoe builder in North Vancouver, whose name is Mike Billy. He's from the Squamish Nation, and he and his family have been building canoes for generations. So he made this for us. Some of them are definitely hand carved, handmade. There's different styles. There's kind of traditional styles in the middle here. Practice paddle over on the far left, and then this is kind of more of like a Polynesian, South Pacific paddle that has become more commonly used today. Field is set up for the Whitecaps tomorrow. They have a match, but you can get a sense of the size of BC Place. This is the largest stadium in British Columbia. It seats about 55,000 people. Unfortunately, you can't see the retractable roof, but you can kind of see the center hung scoreboard. At that time, when it was made and installed in 2011, it was the second largest in North America after Cowboy Stadium's scoreboard. The retractable roof opens depending on the weather. If it's a clear, sunny day, The roof will often be open. Yeah, I mean, this stadium has been in place here since 1983. It was renovated in 2010 and reopened in 2011. So it's a major part of the sporting history of BC.
And we can find you here during games?
Often, yeah. Whitecaps games, BC Lions games.
You have a great seat.
The Canada Rugby Sevens event is held here. Other international rugby and soccer matches are held here. So yeah, it's very well used. Plus concerts, trade shows. Quiet day today, but we'll have a full lower bowl tomorrow for the Whitecaps.
Okay. Yeah, it must be exciting when it's full fans and they're just yelling. Can you hear it from in here?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. That right there is the oldest known Vancouver Canucks jersey. It's from 1951. Predates their time in the NHL. The Canucks joined the NHL in 1970, but they were playing in the Western Hockey League and the Pacific Coast Hockey League prior to that. We know how big football is in the United States, and there's a lot of NFL fans in Canada, but there's a lot of CFL fans, the Canadian Football League, and one of the greatest Canadian Football League players of all time is Louis Passaglia. He played for 25 years, is the leading scorer in professional football, both the CFL and the NFL. That is the only pair of shoulder pads that Louis ever wore. He wore that beginning in high school at Notre Dame here in Vancouver, and then he went to university at Simon Fraser University, wore those shoulder pads, and then he was drafted by the BC Lions, and he wore those for 25 years with the Lions. So the one and only pair of shoulder pads that Louis wore. This is the most valuable item in our collection. So this is the Greg Moore Gallery. Greg was a prodigy. He was just an amazing IndyCar driver from Maple Ridge here in BC. And that car was from the Moore family, who was given it from Jerry Forsyth, the team owner, the players' team owner, after Greg won the 1997, I think it was the Milwaukee Mile. Yeah, he won the 1987 Miller Genuine Draft 200 at the Milwaukee Mile. At that time, he was the youngest winner of an open wheel race in North America. There's since been a couple of younger winners, but he raced on the kart circuit, the IndyCar circuit, and sadly was killed in a crash when he was just 25. But even in the years that he was with us, left a huge impression. Was incredibly popular, very well liked everywhere he raced. The other drivers loved him. So we worked with Greg's family to kind of honor him and create the gallery here. And this was actually the first gallery I curated back in 2006. So before he was racing Indy cars, he was racing go-karts, and this is one of the go-karts that he raced. And according to his mom, Donna, the first vehicle he ever raced was this little red wagon, which he used to bomb around the backyard. And then one day, apparently, he came in and said to his mom, I don't want a red car, I want a gold car. So they spray painted his red wagon gold. These are all the trophies that he was winning in go-karts. He was just an amazing driver. At every level, he was just a prodigy.
Where do you think that comes from? Is that genetic or is that training or what is it?
I think it's a little both. I think there are athletes that have natural gifts, and Greg certainly had some natural gifts in terms of his driving skill, but he also worked at it. He loved it, so he trained and practiced and got better and better and better. And you see that a lot with athletes. They'll have some natural gifts, but they also have the drive and the passion, and that kind of gets them to the next level.
So there are probably people out there with natural gifts that just don't put the effort in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if you've played any sport at any level, there's always people that have incredible skill. It seems to come so easy for them, and then there's others that really have to work hard to keep up. If you could just combine those two qualities, you'd have an incredible athlete. Our participation zone here, where we allow visitors to run on our timed running track, play hockey. There's a climbing wall. There's even table tennis. bubble hockey. Always our biggest fundraiser of the year. It's called the Induction Gala. It's where we formally induct the new class of inductees that have been selected. We haven't been able to gather in person since 2019, so this will be the first in-person Induction Gala in 3 years. It's one of the largest dinners in the city. Usually about 1,000 people, and we're just looking forward to honoring these athletes and welcoming everyone back.
And this is a nonprofit organization.
We're a nonprofit charity. Hero New is our education program. That's where we go into schools, often with our honored members and other athletes, and try to inspire kids to kind of find the athlete within them, or find the hero in them, and get them interested in sport, and maybe learn a few things, teach them about health and wellness, and there's a lot of different messages that are involved in the program. But essentially, it's we let some of our best athletes go out and speak to students and schools.
Okay, so it's not just the staff going out, it's
Nope.
actual athletes.
It's actual athletes, yeah.
I bet they're happy to do that.
Oh, some of them are absolutely. They love it. It has a big impact on kids too. When you got an Olympic gold medalist telling you their story, I mean, that can have a real impact. And for some athletes that are in our hall, they or have been inducted, they've been part of the BC Sports Hall journey. They came here as a kid themselves, or they heard one of these presentations, and it kind of got the wheels turning, like, oh, maybe I could do that. Apparently, there's a guy in Surrey, which is near Vancouver here, that had found, he was a bit of a Zamboni enthusiast, and he found it, and it was being used at a junkyard out in the Surrey area. They'd removed the top portion, so it was just like a deck, and they were using it to move like transmissions and engine parts around this junkyard because it had these great studded tires, which was really handy in the wet, muddy winter months here. So this poor old Zamboni was going up and down this muddy hill, moving car parts, when really it was the first Zamboni that had ever been used in British Columbia. So they restored it, and it's still in the process of being restored. There's actually some parts that are still to be added to it. And when it was delivered to us, it was dropped off on a flat deck at the front of the Hall of Fame. And I asked the driver, I said, does it, I knew it wasn't running, but I said, can it be put into gear so that we can roll it? He said, oh yeah, no problem. He takes off without showing us. So we're trying to figure this out. I thought I had it in neutral, and we start moving it. It moved about 3 feet, and then it stopped dead, and it was just locked in place. And no joke, it was locked in place 10 feet from our front door. And I thought, great, if I can't get this moving, we've got the big, got like a few tons of steel sitting here. One of the biggest artifacts in our collection, and I can't even get it in the front door. But we fiddled with it, managed to get it in gear, and we were able to kind of very slowly push it through the doors and got it in place here.
So who did the restoration of it?
It was a group from Kendrick Equipment who had found the Zamboni originally at the junkyard and then restored it as part of their, their office. They do a lot of Zamboni, like current Zamboni sales and repairs. So for them, this was pretty amazing to find the first used in BC.